Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Saturday, December 16th, 2023 in the Space and Time Continuum. Our daughter comes home from college for the holiday break today. She's coming home. We're picking her up in a couple hours. Excited about that. Having her back for a few weeks. I will be taking a couple weeks off for the two holidays. We have a fun plan for New Year's Eve. I hope you do too. But we'll be back in 2024. But we're here right now, and I want to talk about Liz Cheney is getting a lot of attention right now. She's got a new book. I want to read her book. A friend of mine wrote a text and said, hey, there was a great interview with Liz Cheney. She said she's open to a Biden-Cheney ticket. That's not okay with me. She's Liz Cheney, okay? I welcome her in her fight against Donald Trump, but she's Liz Cheney, and we're going to go back in time right now to 1969. A guy by the name of Richard Bruce Cheney starts his political career. And the more people found out about him, the more people got to know him, they started just calling him Dick, an apt name. Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney's father. He worked in the White House. He got to know Rumsfeld. He got to know Wolfowitz, the evil trinity during the George W. Bush administration. George W. Bush got Dick Cheney, of course, friends of his dad, to oversee the search for a vice president. And wouldn't you know it, Dick Cheney thought,
I went through a lot of resumes, and what I think you need to do, George, is have me be your vice president.
Oh, hey, that's a good idea. Why didn't I think of that in the first place?
Yeah, and then you just sit back and shut up and let me do all the talking. I'm going to be making all the decisions. Your daddy and I talked, and he thinks it's best, too, for you to just, obviously you're going to have to do some speeches and be the public president, but when we're in the White House, you just sit back and shut up.
Okay, good, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, we all know that. That's clear.
There was a cartoon I saw way back, during the Iraq War, and Dick Cheney is whispering in George W. Bush's ear.
They just added Brazilian troops to our effort in Iraq.
Hey, that's great, Dick. How many is a Brazilian again? We can't forget about the George W. Bush, Dick Cheney tenure. They ignored all of the intelligence saying that Osama bin Laden was planning on flying airplanes into buildings in the United States. They didn't want to hear it. So 9/11 happens. I truly believe 9/11 would not have happened if Al Gore had not conceded the election, because Al Gore won the election. Cheney and Bush got in the White House by cheating. In Florida, they changed the rules and took the recount to the Supreme Court to have the Supreme Court then decide, no, Florida should not do their recount. Al Gore concedes the election. Florida does their recount and discovers that Al Gore won in Florida, which would have made him win the electoral vote, as well as the popular vote, which he did win. George W. Bush, just like Donald Trump, got in the White House by losing the election. Okay, so 9/11 happens. Bush, Cheney see it as the equivalent of Pearl Harbor. So it's an excuse to go to war. We have all these war toys. We need to play with them somewhere. They start a war in Afghanistan, even though Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11. The friends of the Bush family in Saudi Arabia, the guys on the airplanes that did this incredible act of hijacking airplanes with small box cutters, were Saudi Arabians. But somebody says, oh, maybe Osama bin Laden is in Afghanistan. We start an all-out war in Afghanistan. And then Dick Cheney had been funneling his own intelligence out of the Pentagon directly into his office. A highly illegal maneuver. He had friends in the Pentagon from the old days, and he made sure they reported directly to him, withholding information from the president and other people, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. There was information that, and this even came out in the 9/11 investigation report, that there was no ties. Iraq had no ties to al-Qaeda. But Dick Cheney took it upon himself to publicly say over and over again, of course, he learned from the Nazis just as much as the current Republicans learned from the Nazis, that if you tell a lie often enough, people start to believe it's true.
It's very clear that Iraq has had a long relationship with al-Qaeda, and it's very clear that they are coming very close to having nuclear capabilities, and they have other weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction.
That's how that term came about. Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. The actual intelligence said there's no evidence Iraq has any weapons of mass destruction. Dick Cheney made sure to lie to enough people that he made sure to lie to the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, so that Powell went and reported that there was yellow cake being pursued by Iraq, which was a lie. Cheney seems to be the only one to know this was a lie. Also, do you remember the name Scooter Libby? Scooter. On October 18th, 2005, the Washington Post reported that the vice president's office was central to the investigation of the Valerie Plame CIA leak scandal. For Cheney's former chief of staff, Louis Libby,
we call him Scooter,
was one of the figures under investigation. Libby resigned his position as Cheney's chief of staff and assistant on national security affairs later in the month after he was indicted. Cheney tried to get a pardon for Scooter Libby, couldn't get it. But what George W. Bush did do was make sure Scooter Libby never went to prison, even though he was supposed to go to prison. And then Donald Trump gave him a full presidential pardon in April of 2018. This is how the Republicans work. There is so much about Dick Cheney. He was a prominent member of the National Energy Policy Development Group, commonly known as the Energy Task Force, composed of energy industry representatives, including several Enron executives. After the Enron scandal, the Bush administration was accused of improper political and business ties. He was also part of an environmental agency, and he made sure that there were less regulations on polluters and things like that. Dick Cheney is an evil force that has been a part of United States politics for way too long. And his daughter is Liz Cheney. I want to play for you something that I appreciate. Regular TV, like The Colbert Show, I never see it. I see clips from The Colbert Show periodically, not even all that often. It's not that I'm against it. I just don't watch TV. Whenever I do, our daughter went to the Thanksgiving Day parade, Macy's parade in New York, and told us she was near the NBC, or I can't remember, CBS cameras. So we tuned into CBS and watched part of the parade. Oh my God, that was excruciating. Reminds me why I don't like to watch TV. The commercials, way too many of them. They're just absurd. It's just absurd. I don't know how people put themselves through that kind of trauma. But anyway, here's a clip from The Colbert Show. He's reminding us about Liz Cheney.
I'm not saying that it is the purview of one party. Why do you think, though, for the first time in our nation's history, the Republican Party won that race and got the first fascist dictator who could possibly take office? I'm just curious if you've done any self-examination of your party's leadership over the last 20 years as to why he is not an aberration, but rather an avatar.
I think he's an aberration. I think
really?
That, yeah. I mean, I think what Donald Trump has done is, first of all, he tapped into a sense among a lot of people in this country that their voice isn't heard. But he then lied to them, and he preyed on their patriotism, and he told them, you know what, I'll speak for you.
But very specifically through things like racism, like Mexicans are rapists, they're killers, they're here to get us. Like that's a very racist ideology.
Absolutely, and
undermining of the media. That's a very fascist thing to do.
Look, there's no question that he's using a fascist playbook.
Right.
But it's also true right now, if you want to talk about, for example, the disgusting anti-Semitism that is on the rise across this country, the left has a huge problem with anti-Semitism. And what we're seeing on our university campuses, for example, and the unwillingness to stand against it. So
I would agree that anti-Semitism is a disease that runs across all cultural boundaries, not only in the United States, but across the world.
Right.
But what I mean by, say, undermining the media is undercutting, sort of like roughing up the referee was a project of the right for the last 20 years. Or undermining public institutions. You say that people believe that our public institutions can take the punishment that Trump will give them, and that's why he's not as dangerous as he should be. But I mean, the Republican Party's mantra has been the government is the problem for so many years.
Yeah, but see, it's really important, in my view, that we not sort of slide into saying everything the Republicans have ever done, is somehow the same as what Donald Trump is doing.
I'm not saying everything. I'm saying those are breadcrumbs.
Yeah, but I think you and I are just not going to agree on that.
She's making points here that anti-Semitism is a huge problem on the left, and then she talks about college campuses. That was a huge setup by the Republicans to try and get those 3 presidents of universities to come to a committee meeting, and they ask them absurd questions and then kind of change the flavor of what is going on. One of them actually has resigned now, but she's referring to that is the type of thing that the Republicans always do. And Colbert talks about undermining the media. If you remember, Dan Rather in, I think, 2005-ish, came out with a report that George W. Bush had his daddy make sure that he was never in harm's way when he was in the military. He basically didn't even go to boot camp. He didn't do anything, but he was able to then say that he was a pilot in the Air Force or something like that. And he essentially never was. He signed up, but his dad made sure that he didn't really have to show up. And then the Cheney-Bush, and I called it the Cheney-Bush administration because it was
Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was the one. I was the one in charge. The other guy was an idiot. Yeah, I was. It's fun being an idiot. You don't ever have to think or nothing. Anyway, they put out some false story saying that Dan Rather's information was false, that Dan Rather lied. Dan Rather ended up retiring early because of that. So yeah, her dad undermined the media. Ronald Reagan was a racist. His administration, the first stop he made when he announced his campaign was in Mississippi, where those young guys got murdered in the civil rights era. He went there because it's one of the most racist cities in the United States. And he talked about states' rights, which is language from the Civil War period. Colbert's trying to get Liz Cheney to realize that Trump is a symptom of the Republican Party. And she's trying to argue, oh, no. The Republican Party has never been white supremacists or anti-Semites. She's trying to say that. And the Republican Party is trying to get anti-Semitism blamed on the left right now, just because a lot of left-wing people are against Netanyahu. By the way, if the fighting stops in Israel, Netanyahu's probably going to prison. He's probably going to have to resign immediately, or he'll be ousted, and he's going to go to prison. The people of Israel are against Netanyahu. The people of Israel are against what Netanyahu's doing in Gaza. But here in the United States, if you say that you're against Netanyahu doing what he's doing in Gaza, you're immediately called an anti-Semite by the Republicans.
I want to play one more clip of Liz Cheney because we cannot forget who Liz Cheney is.
Sure that every American understands what today's Democrat Party stands for with respect to babies and with respect to the murder of babies. We have seen now in states across the country the introduction of legislation that would enable the killing of babies. This is not about abortion. This is about killing babies after they are born. And it is the face of pure evil. And you've seen the leadership of the Democrat Party here on the Hill remain silent. And I want to say personally, as a mother, I'm the mother of 5 kids. I've delivered 5 babies. And the idea that we have to say today to mothers all across this country, that we've got to describe what the Democrats are doing is really horrific.
What the Democrats are doing, the Democrat Party, not the Democratic Party, which it actually is. She's one of them. Don't forget. I very much appreciate what she did on the January 6th committee. I don't think anybody else could have done it as well. I very much appreciate what she did on the January 6th committee. I very much appreciate that she was willing to give up all of her power in Washington, D.C. as an elected official to stand up against Donald Trump. But this is who Liz Cheney is. She's one of them, and don't forget it. We got to be, in this next era, I think what we got to be, you got Dean Phillips, my congressman, who I have stuck up for and now realize that might have been a mistake. He's missing crucial votes in Washington, D.C. by doing this stupid, silly, idiotic stunt of his. I'm pretty fired up about Dean Phillips and Liz Cheney, as you can tell. Dean Phillips said, we have to have Republicans in the administration. So if he becomes president, he wants to make sure to have some of these vile ghouls in his administration. All right? We're going to talk about more about the ghoulishness of the Republican Party. No, Dean Phillips. Maybe a Republican from the 1950s. Now, the Republicans now, okay, we'll come back and talk about that. I wanted to make this point about Liz Cheney, though, and I wanted to take a little bit of time to remember the Cheney-Bush administration and how absolutely horrible they were. I didn't even do a very good job because there is so much to go through. It's kind of like the Trump era. There's the feces fire hose. There was so much lying and corruption and deception of their own people. Colin Powell is pretty pissed at Dick Cheney and George Bush. Of course, Colin Powell's dead now, but he went to his grave being pretty pissed at them because they lied to him and then made him tell a lie. He didn't know it was a lie, but it was a lie. And he did it to NATO and the United States people, and it wasn't even his fault. It was Dick's fault. Now, I don't believe in holding Dick's antics against his daughter Liz, but Liz is one of them. Right now, any Republican is one of them. Talking about the Democrats who want to kill babies even after they're born. It's just absolute BS. And Dean Phillips wants these people, if I can call them people, in his administration? He thinks that will bring America together? We got to be careful of the infiltration of these ghouls to our side, fooling us into thinking that they're not ghouls. No, Liz Cheney cannot be on the ticket with Joe Biden. She was cheering for Roe v. Wade to be overturned. She was working on it. So again, I very much appreciate what she's done on the J6 committee. She did a stellar job running that committee. But she wants women to die. We're going to talk more about that, too, when we come back. I usually like to go into a break on a happy note, but we will have some fun when we come back from this break. You're listening to A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson. We'll be right back.
Donald Trump has faded from where he was in 2020?
There's no question Trump has lost a step, or multiple steps. He is confusing Joe Biden for Obama. I know he's now saying he intentionally did that. Go back and look at the clips. It wasn't intentional. It was look, any of us could have a slip of the tongue, but it's happening to him repeatedly. The reference about how somebody's going to get us into World War II, confusing countries, confusing cities where he is. It's happening more and more. But are we really going to pretend that Donald Trump is just as vibrant and mentally sharp as he was in 2016? Okay.
And we're back on a satellite view. That was Megyn Kelly. She made a little bit of a comeback, I think, because she hosted the last Republican presidential debate. But anyway, she was on the Glenn Beck show. The first voice you heard was Glenn Beck asking her that question. So they're talking about Trump's cognitive decline. And so are a lot of other people. Finally. He's been on a decline for years when he was president as well. And I'm sorry, I do not see any cognitive decline in Joe Biden. I know people are saying he can't put together a sentence. I've seen him do very eloquent speeches as recently as a couple days ago. I don't know what people are talking about when they're saying that Biden has a cognitive decline. It's Trump that does. And, by the way, speaking of, I mean, it's not a cognitive decline, but the craziness. Megyn Kelly also. You know, I know she had a run-in with Trump, and then people took her side. But you got to remember, Megyn Kelly, who says Santa Claus is white because Jesus was white and all of this stuff. She's that person. They all are this person. Megyn Kelly's losing it over Taylor Swift. She's saying you have to boycott Taylor Swift. You have to boycott her events. Taylor Swift events end up creating jobs. She's a significant part of our economy. And Megyn Kelly thinks because Megyn Kelly is yelling into a microphone that everybody should boycott Taylor Swift's events. Taylor Swift events where 60,000 people show up. I don't know. It might even be more than that. So it's you know, that's how they're going to win over the young people, attacking Taylor Swift. And Vivek Ramaswamy, Vivek Ramaswamy, we love to say his name, wants to raise the voting age to 25 because he thinks people between the age of 18 and 25 are too dumb to vote. That's how the Republican Party is going to win over Gen Z. Yeah, that's hilarious to watch. Other things, I wanted to do the deep dive on the Cheneys, and we've done that, but I almost canceled doing any deep dive because of all the stuff that just is starting to happen. The mystery of the missing binder, a binder containing highly classified information related to Russian election interference, went missing at the end of Donald Trump's presidency, raising alarms among intelligence officials that some of the most closely guarded national security secrets from the U.S. and its allies could be exposed. This almost sounds like, okay, we already know this stuff, right? But it's part of the feces fire hose. This was a very, very important binder. It had information about Russia impeding the 2016 election. The binder contained raw intelligence the U.S. and its NATO allies collected on Russians and Russian agents, including sources and methods that informed the U.S. government's assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to help Trump win the 2016 election. You got Russians meeting with Don Jr. You remember that? In 2016? Hey, we have things that may be helpful to you about this Hillary. And then him saying, hey, that sounds great. If that's what you got, that sounds great. The intelligence was so sensitive that lawmakers and congressional aides with top secret security clearances were able to review the material only at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. This is a new report, but it was in the Cassidy Hutchinson book. When I read this, I thought, hey, I read about this in the Cassidy Hutchinson book. She didn't even really know how important it was, but she talks about Mark Meadows saying, hey, Cassidy, can you keep this in your drawer of your desk? And she's like, it's marked highly classified. I don't think I'm even allowed to even touch it, much less read it. No, I don't. Should not be in my desk. She, like I reported when I went through her book a few weeks ago, she was doing things that Mark Meadows should have been doing. She was the one who was saying, no, it's a classified document. No, it can't be in my desk. What if somebody else came and found it in my desk when I wasn't by my desk? No, I don't want to. I don't even think you're supposed to have it here. She tells a story about Mark Meadows. The very last thing he did, they wanted to declassify this, but they wanted to redact it first. And they just had White House aides going through redacting it. People without security clearances. What they wanted to redact was all the stuff that proved Russia. They wanted to talk about the FBI doing the investigation called Crossfire Hurricane in the first place, and because they wanted to change the story. The FBI was looking into Russia, the investigation into the 2016 Trump campaign and Russia. But the raw intelligence on Russia was among its most sensitive classified materials, and top Trump administration officials repeatedly tried to block the former president from releasing the documents. He wanted to release it because he wanted to say, see, they were investigating my campaign in 2016. They were trying to do interference on the election. He was trying to only get parts of it released. That's why he wanted it redacted. Cassidy Hutchinson is pretty sure that Mark Meadows took it home. She's not positive he took it home, but she saw him take it with him in the very last moments, literally, when he got into his car to go back to his house, no longer having a job in the White House. As I remember in the book, it was within a half hour before noon when Biden becomes president on the 20th of January, 2021. She saw him take it with him. She said it was an unredacted original. In this report, it says it was like 10 inches thick, and now nobody knows where it is. And I don't quite understand that part of it because it's at the archives, so isn't it at the archives, or is it just part of it's at the archives? I don't know. But very mishandled classified information. Big story this just yesterday, I think, on Friday. But to me, it's kind of not news, but I mean, we knew all this was going on, didn't we? I think we did. And another huge thing that just happened yesterday, Rudy Giuliani. The ruling came in as to how much he needs to pay Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. I remember reporting about this back in the summer of 2022 when Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss were on TV testifying to the J6 committee and the stories they told about their lives being completely upended and ruined by this ghoul Iani. Absolute monster. And he's still doing it. He came out after they said, okay, you have to pay them $148 million. He comes out and he says, I just need to analyze this. I need to analyze this because, you know, I'm going to get a new trial. And in that trial, this trial is going to be turned around so fast it'll make your head spin. Okay, that's not a thing that can happen. You can't get a new trial. They sued you. You can't get a new trial, but he says it's a sham trial, even though he and his lawyers approved of the 8 jury members. That's how it works in court. When Trump says he didn't have a jury, that's because he chose to not have a jury. His people chose to not have a jury. But this is 8 people that Giuliani approved of, and now he's saying that it's a sham, and he's going to prove. It's been 3 years since the election of 2020. Why, if he, I have proof. There's plenty of proof, and I have it, and I'm going to show it. He said, I'm going to testify, and then you'll know the truth. Well, he didn't testify. His own choice. He did not testify. And he still comes out after all is said and done and says he's going to prove that They are liars and he's telling the truth. So he's still defaming them. He's likely to be sued by them again because he's still defaming them. He's crazy. I mean, I don't know. He might have gone completely round the bend, but I don't think so. I think he's just an absolute ghoul. And he always has been. The hero that he was made out to be after 9/11, that was all BS. He was a monster, racist, white supremacist monster his whole life. Nothing can repay them for what happened, but at least it's good that Giuliani is being punished. It's really good that it's gone that high, because we need to start telling these monsters, these rich billionaire monsters, you can't do this crap. You can't do it. Trump's going to go down hard in the next few weeks. We're going to find out just how hard he's going to go down in the fraud case in New York. That's not even talking about any of the criminal cases that he's up against for January 6th and the 2020 election interference and all of that. Speaking of Trump.
Hey, it's your favorite president, me. And now I've got more of those trading cards. I even don't really understand what they are. They're digital. I don't know. Seems like you could just copy them for free. But no, I'm selling them for $99 a piece. And if you buy 47 of them, I'll give you one actual card with a piece of my suit that I was wearing when I got the mugshot.
I'm not going to play you the video he actually made, but this is basically, because his video is too long, it's got horrible music behind it, showing the cards, and it's just so ridiculous. He's selling parts of his suit, so he says. All you need to do is buy 47 digital trading cards of just horrible art of him looking like superhero and policeman and, I don't know, the Village People. But if you buy 47 of them, don't worry though, they're only $99 a piece. Then you get a very, very small piece of the suit
I was wearing when the famous mugshot was taken.
Most people would be embarrassed about their mugshot, but he's not. He's got absolutely no shame. We're running out of time, but I got to talk about this story in Iowa. Yeah, evangelicals are furious because in Iowa, they, of course, have a nativity scene at the Capitol, along with the Christmas tree and all of that. You could say the Christmas tree could still be pagan because, you know, the Christians stole Christmas from the pagans. It's a, winter solstice celebration, and they wanted to steal it and make it into Jesus's birthday. So you could argue that the tree is not religious, but the nativity scene definitely is. And the Satanic Temple of Iowa wants to point out First Amendment rights. So they put up their own display. It's just great. It's got, the goat with the horns with like a red Christmassy shirt over it with some nice plants in front of it and some words. It's actually, everybody thinks that the Satanic Temple is going to be like, worship the devil. It's more like, it's kind of more paganish. But that aside, it's hilarious because evangelicals are all pissed off about it. And the governor can't do anything about it. Kim Reynolds, everyone's mad at her, saying, well, how can you allow this Satanic Temple of Iowa to have a display here? Today, Governor Kim Reynolds released the following statement in response to the Satanic Temple display in the Iowa Capitol building. Like many Iowans, I find the Satanic Temple's display in the Capitol absolutely objectionable. In a free society, the best response to objectionable speech is more speech, and I encourage all those of faith to join me today in praying over the Capitol and recognizing the nativity scene that will be on display. The true reason for the season. Hate that term. The reason for the season. We're so smart, we could figure out a rhyme. So I think that's hilarious that nobody is allowed to take down the Satanic Temple display in the Capitol building of Iowa, of all places. It's got to stay up until Christmas, or as long as they want to keep the nativity scene up. Okay, we have run out of time. I wanted to talk about it. I need to make the show longer, obviously. But I am going to go out on a positive note. I'm going to play you a clip of my governor, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, who eloquently explains some things here that I think are important for us to always remember.
And you said, basically, there's no such thing as a generic Republican. These guys are weird. Once they start running, their weirdness shows up. What did you mean? Weird
I'll
how?
stand by that. Well, look, just the strange things they become obsessed with, demonizing our children, becoming obsessed with people's personal lives in their bedrooms, restricting freedoms. I'm surrounded by states who are spending their time figuring out how to ban Charlotte's Web in their schools while we're banishing hunger from ours with free breakfast and lunch. That's what the public's looking for. That's what they're trying to get to. And they will weirdly obsess with everything to be mean and cruel and small in their ideas. And I didn't hear anything last night that did anything different to that. So I'll stand by that. I just think Americans know this is just weird stuff to be focused on. And many of the times it's just projection. We hear these stories every time. They want to project morality to us. And I say, as your elected leaders, you don't need to hear a sermon from us, but you expect us to try and live one. And I think whether it's making sure the middle class has what they need, protecting reproductive rights, truly addressing climate change, governors are doing that across the country. They're popular with that. And I think we understand we're able to do that because of Joe Biden's policies, whether it's the Infrastructure Act, CHIPS Act, bringing manufacturing back to America. Those are things people want to hear about, not demonizing some child because of who they are. At the end of the day, Americans are better than that.
That's my governor, Tim Walz. Very proud of that. He's a really good guy. I've met him many times. Actually had a meeting with him once with our business crew that I used to work with, small business at the Capitol. I thought I would go out on that to, again, remind us all, 2024 election is going to go very well because the American people, just what he said. I'll let him have the last word on that. The Democrats are going to do very, very well. And there are many reasons, and some are mentioned there by Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. And we've run out of time. Thank you so much for listening. You know what this is about. This is you and me gathering together to make sure and help each other so that we can argue for what's good and against what's bad. Let's all do that going into the 2024 season. And by the way, I'm taking the holiday season off. The winter solstice holiday season off, and New Year's Eve is going to be a blast. Looking forward to 2024, and we will be back that first week of 2024. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I don't know what date it'll be. I guess it'll be around the 7th, or I'll be recording the next show. Thank you so much for listening to this one.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.